Okay, thank you, everyone. Welcome. This is Washington State Building Code Council, IBC Technical Advisory Group for October 14th, 2024. Could we please take roll?
Yes, it looks like we've got some people trickling in still. We may not quite have quorum yet, but we can figure that out. So, Chair Todd Bayrether,
Here.
Chair Alternate Roger Herringa. We got a decline message from him on this meeting. Architect's Primary Joe Mayo.
Here.
Thank you. For the alternate, Chair Fortaleza.
Present.
Thank you. Building Official Primary Tim Woodard.
Present.
Thank you. For the alternate, Steve Belzak. Not seeing them in the room today. Fire Services Primary Lance Dahl. Not seeing them here today. Cities and Counties Primary Hoyt Jeter. He is here.
I'm here. Sorry about that.
Don't spill the coffee. All right. Affordable Housing Representative Primary Todd Sullivan. Not seeing them in the room today. General Contractor Developer Primary Bill Mybush sent a declined message. Manufacturer Supplier Primary Brian Horseman.
Present.
Thank you. Structural Engineer Primary Joshua Mergens.
Present.
Thank you. For the alternate, Trent Tinney. Don't see them here today. Person with Disability Accessibility Expert Primary Michael Shaw.
Present.
Thank you. Building Owner Property Manager Primary Brett Conway.
Present.
Thank you. General Public Subject Matter Expert Primary Michael Barth. Not seeing them here today. For the alternate, Leah Summer.
Here.
Thank you. State Enforcement Agency Primary Paul Clark.
Here.
Thank you. Fire Protection Engineer Primary Andy Leonto. I don't see him here today. With that, we have 10 seats represented and a quorum is 8, so we're working today.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public like to be recognized? Thank you, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Torsky with Cascade Natural Gas. Thank you.
Ardell.
Ardell Jalla, building official for City of Seattle. Thanks.
Thank you. Welcome. Okay. We'll move on. First item is to review and approve the agenda. Can we have a motion to approve, please?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Hoyt.
Second.
This is Josh Martin.
Okay, thank you. Any proposed edits? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so approved. Dustin, do we have minutes today?
No, our minutes are running short right now, so we're 3 meetings behind on those, but the plan is to get them all to us next week. We got a little bit of extra time in between meetings on this one.
Yeah, no worries.
Just as a point of order, for when we're making motions, if you're going to make the motion, could you please state your name as you make the motion, just so we can get appropriate notes for that?
Okay, thank you. Okay, skipping 3 then on to 4. Public comment. Would anyone like to address the tag on an item not on the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll move right into our agenda. One note, if you heard Dustin and me talk before, I need to go mobile at 3:30, so I'm gonna hand over the chair to Dustin to finish the meeting, and I'll rejoin, but won't be chairing. Okay. With that, Dustin, I think we'll start with number 5.
Yep, number 5 is proposal 24 GP1-127. It is in a definitions proposal. Let me get it all pulled up and I will share my screen.
Okay, and once you pull it up, I'm ready to talk. So we can just go.
All right, Hoyt, you drafted this one for us. We had some conversation on this topics last week on Thursday, and this one's in relation to the family home child care. There we go.
Yeah, so
And there's the wait, I gave you the wrong share, I think. Oh, stop share.
okay, what that is actually, I'll wait till you pull it up. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. There we go. Should be the appropriate one now.
Okay, just to talk what this one is dealing with. This has to deal with the child care facility. And what happened in the IRC, there was an expedited rule that was filed, and that's where they increased the child care in the IRC from 12 to 16. And what I was intending to do is the IRC is a prescriptive, non-design professional item, and I was looking at, if it's right for the IRC, I also believe it should be right for the IBC. The one thing in there is that's pretty much the intent of this proposal, and the next view that covers that. That Washington State rule, I didn't have it in there at the first time, but that is 24-08-036. That was an expedited review or expedited rules, and so I wanted to just confirm that rule is still in effect. It was done by Damon Doyle. If the only thing I want to say, if this has not been approved and in effect and it's not correct, then I would pull this proposal. But I'm just making the IRC and the IBC match. And I do believe in the IBC, you have a design professional that's required to design for this. I believe they're appropriate and should be able to design something similar to the IRC. And that was one of my proposals for it by definition of the child care home. That's it. Any questions? I'm here to answer.
I'll just clarify that the expedited rule didn't finalize its process. So this change that was intended to be made in the 2021 IBC and IFC is not active and current, but the changes were made in the IRC, and I'm still working with the code revisor to make sure what the process is to reinitiate or finalize the process as it stands right now for the expedited rules in 2021 code. This is a proposal for the 2024 code.
So Hoyt, with that in mind, it seems appropriate to propose to move this forward, right? And then, since the intent is there?
Yes, that would be my intent, because the IRC has it, you said, Dustin, if I understand correctly, what you
Correct.
said. And I think it should also be the same in the IBC, not different.
Okay. So with that, is there a motion, Hoyt, maybe, is there a motion to move this forward?
This is Tim Woodard, and I would make a motion to move this proposal forward.
Thank you, Tim.
Second. Can I second my own proposal or not? I don't know.
Probably could, but maybe we'll
Okay.
see if there's another second first.
I rather
This is
not.
Josh Mergens. I'll second it.
There we go. Thank you, Josh. And Hoyt, to that point, we should probably announce when our names get attached to these, if these were meant to be. This one is not a tag sponsored proposal, right?
This one is just the proposal came through with Hoyt's personal information on there. It didn't say anything for the tag, but he was asked by the tag to do this particular proposal.
Okay. Maybe that's helpful if we just state that for everyone in these meetings.
I will for sure. I will for sure.
Because then I think it'd be appropriate. It'd be fine, Hoyt, if you were to second.
And as another kind of quick point of order, just to make sure we're making our motions clear for what we're actually doing, moving this forward is a recommendation to adopt for the full council.
Sure.
If we're making the motion, I would ask that we make a motion to recommend adoption to the council.
So I will revise my motion. I make a motion to recommend to move this to the full council.
Recommend adoption to the full council,
Adoption to
by the full council. Okay,
by the full-
thank you. And Josh, that's or acceptable?
Yes, absolutely. I maintain my second.
Thank you. Okay, with that, any other discussion? Okay, let's try a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so this one is recommended then. Thank you. We'll go on to item 6, which is 128, please.
Okay, give me a moment.
Me also. Okay, so I'll start talking. I'll wait till Dustin brings it up.
Good to go.
Okay, this is going to be adopted in the next code, and it's something that is that's basically defining when you have to treat. I believe this is also in the fire code, when you have to treat it as a high-rise building. So what happens is with we have a lot of occupied roofs, and a lot of discussions has come on is when do you fall under the occupied roof for a high-rise, and when did you not? Because the roof is not really a floor. But in the new code, they're going to kind of treat a roof similar to a floor. And what this ends up doing is instead of making it like every floor, every occupied roof, you're going to fall under the high rise. What this is saying, small areas that are up there should not make the whole building fall under a high rise. And occupant load for assembly areas 15 or 15 times 50 is where I got the occupant load of 50. You got about 750 square feet up on the roof. So what this is trying to do is clarify that you're not under a high rise if you have a small area up on the roof when the occupant load of 50, if an occupant load is less than 50. So, and that's what this proposal is trying to clarify and make clear. So designers, and we get this question a lot at the city of Tacoma. We've had to deal with this, and this is, I believe, what the code intent is for small areas. So.
Okay, is there any discussion or public comment before we make a motion on this? I have a question. Like, what does the current code say? Isn't this the same for high rise? 21?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought it was in the 24. It's going to be in the 24 that was adopted. I don't think it said that in the 21.
Okay, we lit it up here. So
Yeah.
Richard?
If it did, then I could be mistaken. But what I thought I saw, it wasn't actually specifically in the 21. I thought it was in the next cycle.
Okay, thank you. Richard?
Thanks, Hod. Yeah, it is my understanding this is already a state amendment. We're bringing it over, but there are some differences. Our state amendment brings in that language about the occupant load threshold of 50. The 24 codes also talk about an occupiable roof instead of occupied roof, so that would be an editorial change. But I guess my question is it the intent to retain this language about the threshold, which would represent the difference between our state amendment and the 24 definition of high-rise building?
Okay, does anyone have a comment to that? Ardell?
I do want to offer some context. This is a code interpretation that was then codified. So City of Seattle has been using this slight break of locally we have it as 50 if it's a sprinkled building and 10 if it's a non-sprinkled building. And so the idea is that we had a shift in land use and zoning where we were getting requirements for amenity spaces, and putting an amenity space on a 7-story building was triggering high rise. And so this was an allowance that was developed to still allow a small amenity space to not trigger that high rise threshold as as Hoyt explained. And so yeah, it's do you want to provide an opportunity for small amenity spaces without triggering that high-rise threshold? And what is that flexibility that we want to build in locally? If we just leave it as per the model code, you're triggering high-rise. And that's just some context I wanted to share. I'm not, seeking the non-sprinkled addendum, but just wanted to offer that as some context in Seattle at least. Thanks.
Thank you, Ardell. John?
Yeah, I think Dustin's pointing out there as in the in what he's highlighted there or he's showing is that's what Hoyt is doing is bringing forward an existing state amendment. So right now the base code, model code would just say with an occupied floor, more than 75 feet, and then we still have the 50, occupant load kind of trigger there. And so all we're doing here is keep maintaining the current state amendment.
And I don't remember, did we not do that already?
I think we probably did. I'm drilling down into our reports on this one to see what we had for this one, but I would imagine that we recommended to maintain this amendment moving forward, and that we may not need the proposal to do to maintain that amendment. So we have lots of amendments that we are maintaining that we're not looking to make that proposal on, and so that's just carrying forward. So a proposal to change it would be needed. A proposal to remove the amendment language would be needed. But just to maintain the language as the status quo, we wouldn't need a proposal for that per se.
Oh, okay. If that's the case, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt other people with their hands. I wasn't sure of that, so I just wanted to make sure we maintain that. So if that's the one thing, if you're 100% sure, Dustin, that that's going to stay in there, that's great. I'm for keeping it. If it's not, I just wanted to make sure this didn't get missed. So which either way is fine with me.
Gotcha.
And we still could make a motion to move it forward. Go ahead, Tim.
I was gonna say, I think because this was a state amendment, we couldn't lean on the model code for the change. I just don't remember if you said we could use, kind of like a technical interpretation. I thought maybe the reason the tag brought this back is because this change is done in the or as a state change, we needed to bring it back here to change the wording to occupiable floor versus occupied floor.
That rings a bell.
Okay. So I think all we're doing is it didn't get captured in here, and I would like to see if maybe we could just make a motion to change that to occupiable.
Yeah, if I can make a motion, since it's my proposal, to modify that to occupiable, I'm in 100% agreement with that. So.
Ardell, did you have a comment? No. Is that, and I can't remember now, was it also occupiable floor, or was when we were going through those definitions in the 24?
So in the,
I mean, those are editorial, but we might as well capture them if we can remember here.
So in the 24 definition here, I have occupied floor or occupied roof added. So there's some nuance here. If we want to compare the 24 code here on the left to the 21 code here on the right, it doesn't seem like the model code picked up occupiable, but we did have the conversation for sure during our reports generation meetings that the term occupiable is being used across the code, and we were looking to make that change in this amendment.
I thought that was a 24 definition changes. Am I wrong? I can't remember.
Well, so I don't have the ability to highlight here on the left screen, but you can see here the blue text right around that. We're looking at the model code as published by ICC online.
Yeah, they didn't, the way I understand it, I think we put in an occupiable. I was just making it to exactly what the new code is written. So either way, I think we get the same thing. Whatever, I'm gonna defer to what other people want to do. I think my proposal is fine the way it is, but if it goes occupiable, I'm fine with that too. So, I mean, either way, I think we accomplished the same goal.
Go ahead, John.
There's an errata that ICC released back in November. That's dated November 1st, 2023. The first occupied has been changed to occupiable already.
Okay,
So yeah, in the base model language there, right there. Yeah, that's occupiable via errata.
okay. It just hasn't caught up online yet.
For high rise.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So that means the state amendment would need to change to occupiable roof as well in the second sentence.
Yes.
And I think that was the change you made on the screen, Dustin.
Is that only for roof and not for floor? I know we're getting in the weeds here, but
Yeah, the occupiable roof is the issue, not occupiable floors. There, I don't think they use occupiable floor anywhere.
no, and I was just checking the 24. The model code now has occupiable roof as its own definition, not just in the high rise.
Yeah.
Definition. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
I should have thought that. So apologize.
Sorry, I missed that, right? No, well, that's the part I don't know if it's occupiable floor.
So this is Tim Woodard. I would make a motion to have this brought to the SBCC for full adoption with the changes on the screen.
Okay. Thank you, Tim.
I'm not supposed to second, someone else should do it. So
It's okay, Hoyt. If it says sponsored by the tag, that's fine.
I second the motion.
Thank you, Hoyt. Okay, John.
What's on the right there does not match the model code, I don't think. Again, so
Not
it's
quite.
a building with an occupied floor or occupiable roof is what's in the 2024 code. Occupied floor or occupiable roof.
That's what I see too, yeah.
So the first one is occupied IED, not IABLE.
Yeah, that's correct. I thought that was the one we're doing exactly.
Occupied floor, Dustin.
Oh, occupied, okay.
Yeah. And then the last sentence then is still correct.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. If anything, we're consistent with our language, so okay. Are those, I think it still applies here because it's what is in front of us here. Is that acceptable to both the motion and the second?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, so the motion is to recommend for adoption. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, with that, 128 is recommended for adoption, and we'll go on to agenda item 7054.
Let me save this real quick.
Thank you for making those changes and stuff to make it all match. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're
Yeah, thank you.
welcome. On these, if there's small editorial things that I can do that's not substantive, I can do it. And just as a reminder to everybody, we'll be bringing any of these modifications back for one final look at the end of our process, so the public can have some time to digest anything that we do during this meeting or any of the future meetings as well. So
Okay, 054 temporary event definition. John, I believe you're the proponent.
Yes. Speaking for the Washington Association of Building Officials Technical Code Development Committee. Yes, this is one of 5 proposals we put in relative to temporary structures. This is kind of follow up what happened in the 2024 code. So there were a whole bunch of changes made in the base code, the IBC, around the loading of temporary structures. And the idea is, a lot of it came out of the COVID era, these temporary restaurant structures that are on the sidewalks, what do they get designed for? And there is also some concerns about traveling temporary shows like State Fair and stages and things like that get moved around and reused. And there have been some spectacular failures of them in recent years. So a committee in 2024 for the 2024 code, a committee of engineers and industry, entertainment industry folks, with input from a bunch of us on the regulation side, came up with a whole bunch of changes that got put into the 2024 code. Unfortunately, there was such a rush to get them in, and I have to say, there is so much desperation to get something in the code that there were a lot of holes that got left in there. And so what I've done is submitted 5 proposals to try to get those cleaned up, and we're just addressing kind of the what I think are minimum conflicts that we need to fix. And this is the first one, and I'm hoping it's fairly simple. The focus of all the code changes in 2024 were around what they called public occupancy temporary structures, so what I call a POTS for short. And again, the idea was all about thinking about those restaurant structures on the sidewalks and try to deal with those. Or these state fairs, again, where you got a large public assembly that may be exposed to the hazard. So the problem is that the definition for temporary structure, if you look down below it by reason statement, is the temporary structure, what I highlighted in yellow there, is there to support a temporary event, okay? If you go to what's the current definition in temporary event, which is up above there, which is what I'm trying to change, it's only the single use during the life of a public occupancy temporary structure. So only public occupancy temporary structures qualify for the definition of temporary structure, and that's just totally wrong. So what I'm doing is just getting rid of public occupancy for a temporary event. Anytime you put up a temporary structure at a given location, it is now a temporary structure. I mean, it kind of follows that way. So that's all this changes. There are, again, other changes that kind of correlate with this, but that's all this one is about.
Hey, John, in this, it defines an event, which is a single use. And then in the temporary structure definition, it's 180 days. Does that mean there can be multiple events within 180 days, I assume?
Yes, I mean, it depends how it's somewhat open to interpretation. I believe that, yeah, again, some of this is current language, some of it is new. It could be. I mean, you know, what do you call an event? I guess, you know, if you had a COVID vaccination tent, you know, and you got a lot of people in there, is one event each day, or is it an event just the use of it as a, you know, vaccine structure protection? I believe, you know, it's going to be a little bit open to interpretation because it'll depend on what it's being used for. If you take that same COVID structure and now I'm going to turn in to use it for something else, yes, it should get looked at again. So that would not be the same event. So I think it kind of depends.
Okay, thank you. Wait.
Wait, you're muted.
Yes, yeah, no, I had hit to mute. My mouse wasn't working very good. One question on this, John, just curious on, and I'm just asking this. I noticed when you go to like sporting events and stuff like that, a lot of times I see these people that are selling objects and stuff like that. They put up a temporary structure during that place. Are those what you're talking about? You know, those get inspected and dismantled and all that stuff for like a sporting event where on the side selling hot dogs or whatever? Or is that not under this, wouldn't fall under this thing?
Well, okay, so technically it would fall into the definition, but there are exceptions later on that are in the chapter. in chapter 31 and in the fire code that would say if you're if you're not too big, then you basically are exempt from the code. So those your hot dog vendors would not be subject to this, most likely. Your craft shows would likely not be subject to these, because those are, again, tend to be 10 by 10 or 12 by 12 tents, right? Canopy structures. So those would not be, and it also has to be used, well, okay, I'll stop there. Yeah.
Thank you, Tim.
Maybe along the same lines as Hoyt a little bit, but I was just curious if the public occupancy portion was just meant to say a structure that's to support, the public actually entering these types of temporary structures. In my mind, I was thinking kind of like when somebody does the, you know, bug removal of a house, they'll do a air-filled tent over the top of it, something that exceeds the square footage limitations, but it's a temporary structure. And the idea that maybe there was some thought put into trying to weed out only the ones that are going to be occupied by this, let's say, public, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, yeah, I was involved in the in the development of this last cycle too. And no, that I don't think that's what they were after. Again, the public occupancy was, when they think about those are purely, your COVID, your that's what they were thinking about anyway, was the big things. As far as that you're tenting for termite control and things like that, to me, that's not a structure. The structure is actually the house itself or the building itself, right? To me, that's just no way that's a containment something or other. It's, I would not have called that a temporary structure myself.
Okay. Just a reminder, these are open meetings, so anyone from the public is free to raise their hand and join in. If nothing else, we hear a motion, please.
I make a motion to move this forward.
So the motion is to recommend for approval by the council.
That's correct. Move forward with approval by the council. Yeah.
Thank you. That was Hoyt, Destin.
Gotcha.
Do we hear a second?
This is Tim W, and I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Okay, so it's been motioned and seconded. Any other discussion or deliberation? Okay. With that, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? I should also be asking for abstentions. Okay, with that then, 054 has been recommended for approval. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item 8 is petition 130. Wait, is that you also? Yeah.
And Ms. Hoyt.
Yes, that is me. I've had these on these projects. I actually just did the Tacoma General Hospital, where they had a helicopter pad or things like that was up on the roof. Okay. And it wasn't 100% clear that you had to maintain that for structures for that stair enclosure going up. And above that roof, there were some disagreements with the architect. I believe this was the intent of the code, that if you have exit enclosures or elevator shafts, that shall be enclosed with a fire barrier and opening protection that matches the rating in the respective shaft enclosure below. That's what this is actually trying to accomplish, to make sure that's 100% clear that it's not stopping at the level of the roof, and that's what I was putting in for I2, and I was doing this for the I2 occupancies only. So.
Okay, thank you, Hoyt. Richard?
Hey, Todd, this is a current state amendment. Can anyone confirm that whether or not this has been retained?
My computer's running slow and the report that I was hoping to pull up is still trying to boot up and load on my
Okay.
screen, so
Just wanted to point out that this is already a existing state amendment.
gotcha.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Paul,
Yeah, so I think this was just a small change that Hoyt was doing for to get in the WAC the addition of the meters or something like that, I think, from what I remember, because I think that I can't remember exactly, but the WAC didn't include those. But in reality, I talked to my upper management, and all of our I2 occupancies, hospitals and things. We were proponents of this in 2015, but I found out just recently that, we wouldn't necessarily need this to be a state amendment going forward, because there's a lot more mitigations in 418, the NFPA 418, that for helipads and things like that. So we were proponents, but the codes have changed, and I don't know that we necessarily need to continue to have this as a state amendment.
okay, thank you, Paul. Did yeah, I don't recall if we discussed this when we reviewed the model code and the amendments.
It's not in the model code right now. I know that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant when we reviewed the amendments and move forward from the 21.
Yeah, I see what he's saying. This is still, I looked at that code section, and I'd have to pull it up again, but I don't believe it was as, maybe I'm using because I'm in the building code all the time, but I know I've had problems with this not getting met, and I've had dealt with it just recently. And I talked to our fire marshal at the city of Tacoma too, what their thought, because he's in the fire code all the time. This is maintaining that level of protection off that roof. He also ended up explaining to me that he's had this issue, or this has come up in other projects in the past, not only for the one I was working on recently for the city of Tacoma, but I believe this is required, should be, I think this does clarify and makes it clear what's exactly required. Even the door that's opening up from that, it's just part of an enclosure already. This also deals with smaller structures when you have that. One of the things in the fire code they have also on these landing barriers for the helicopters is draining the fuel away from it. There's a lot of fire code requirements for these helipads, and I think this is for any I2 roof structures. This is important to maintain that exit enclosure, because that is the way to exit off that building. And I have had people not interpret it this way, so hopefully this gets approved.
Yeah.
I think we can all maybe have the discussion on whether or not it should be approved or not, but it's already, again, my understanding, it's already in the 2021 state building code. I just compared them verbatim, and they read the exact same way. So unless the tag took action to not carry this through, which I do not recall, I believe we did, then I just don't think we need this, but I could be mistaken.
I think that's correct. And even if we were to recommend to deny it, it doesn't necessarily strike it out if we moved it forward as amendment before. Unless someone has a different interpretation.
Well, I might have not been at that meeting then to approve this, but yeah, if it's already going to be in there, then that's fine. I just did not want it not to be put in there. So I guess that's up to Dustin, if he could tell me if this is for sure going to be in the next code. If it's not, I think it should be put in there.
So I'm still having issues getting our reports to open up on my computer. here. Looking at the WAC online though, this is in here. I'm still trying to review it word for word, but it appears that the metric measurements are in there. They may not be exactly what you have there in red, the 18.28 meters, but the 186 meters square is in there. And there might be one metric measurement that's missing there, but
Yeah, the red is what I changed. So is the last sentence there also?
yes, it is.
Okay, then if we're moving that one forward, then the only thing would be that meters, but that's an editorial change, not an technical change.
Okay. Okay, well, it's in front of us. Would anyone like to make a motion to recommend approval for approval?
Well, I mean,
This is Paul Clark. I'll make a motion to move it forward. Yeah, I just didn't think that it just I didn't think we needed to be singled out in the state because most of the means of egresses are covered in other kind of provisions, but I don't have a problem moving it forward.
Thank you, Paul. Is there a second?
a second.
Okay, second by Hoyt. With the editorial changes to. By the way, what is the convention? Should it be millimeters or meters? I don't know.
Looking at what's in the model code drafting of this, it's millimeters.
Okay.
So it'd be 18,288 millimeters and then 186 meters squared. So this is, if I was going to make a modification to add to our state amendment, the metric measurement, it would be 1,288. And I guess they don't utilize the comma in there either.
Yeah, I would just match. It just seems appropriate to match the model code since it's the same content and it happens to be right after the 60 feet rather than after length, but from what I've seen.
You are correct. So let me pop that out.
Okay.
Small modification here.
Yep.
And I will highlight that and save it as a revision.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, it's been moved and seconded to recommend for approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, with that, 130 has been recommended for approval. Thank you, Hoyt.
And just because I missed it, who is our second on that motion?
That was Hoyt.
Wait, okay.
Go ahead, Ardell.
Todd, I apologize. This is out, and you can just tell me if this is out of order. When John introduced the errata on the high-rise definition, that what Hoyt put forward as the amendment was based on the 21 language, right? Moving forward, the existing second sentence of that high-rise definition. With the 24 code change that John just flagged, it makes the second sentence not work with the first sentence of the high-rise. Yeah, because a building with an occupied floor or occupiable roof located more than 75 feet above the lowest level of fire department vehicle access. That's the add on that first sentence was occupiable roof.
That's the wrong one. I'm sorry.
Sorry. So when you add the existing language for the purposes of this definition, an occupiable roof with an occupant load of 50 or more is considered to be an occupied floor. The first sentence still says or occupiable roof. Like it doesn't. The first sentence would still allow an occupiable roof with an occupant load of 50 or less. to meet the definition.
I'm kind of tracking. Hoyt, do you
We're
have?
saying the
So
50 and the 75 are in conflict.
no, Dustin. So if you highlight the first or occupiable roof, if you just can highlight that, that is not part of our current 21 definition, correct?
Let me get in there and double check.
That's correct.
So then for the purposes of this definition, it's referencing back to what is an occupied floor. An occupied floor is an occupied roof with an occupant load of 50 or more. But by having occupiable roof in the first sentence, it's all occupiable roofs
Yeah, that's
trigger
correct.
high rise. Does that?
Well,
Is it-
it's not, because I see what you're saying. In the standard code that it says here, what the purpose of this, for the purpose of this definition, because high-rise building is this. And occupied, if you look under an occupied roof that only has an occupied load of 50 or more shall be considered an occupied floor. So I guess your definition would be if you read that first sentence, you're basically saying any occupied roof located more than 75 feet above the lowest fire is a high-rise building.
Which is how the model code reads,
That's how the model
correct?
code says. And what this is actually stating, okay, that's correct. You read this in, unless it's noted somewhere else in the code. So then it says, for the purpose of this definition, an occupied, I guess you could, occupied,
An occupiable roof with an occupant load of 50 or more is an occupied floor, but an occupiable roof of any occupant load is an occupiable roof.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, Ardell, is before there was no mention of occupied roof or occupiable roof, right? So the second sentence was
Was to
addition.
clarify what an
So-
occupied floor
So
is.
what if we said like a building with an occupied floor or occupiable roof with an occupant load of 50 or more located more than 75 feet, blah, 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 and then take out that second sentence? Wouldn't that work?
And that works, and that was the original proposal from Lee Kranz in the 21 code at the national, and it was a building with an occupied roof,
Right.
having an occupant load of 50 or more, or an occupied floor located
And-
more than 75 feet above the lowest level of fire department access.
Yeah, they didn't like the qualifier. They just wanted they didn't want the threshold.
I got it. So you want to combine it into one sentence rather than two. What I was
Or
trying-
strike it and just match the current language today. It works with the current language today in the 21 code, but it doesn't quite work here with the
Yeah.
24 model code change. And if you all disagree, I wanted to point that out.
The 24, I'm just going to open that up right now.
Richard or Josh, go ahead.
Oh, I just lowered my hand.
There we go.
Thank you.
I was just gonna say, based on what we're discussing, and maybe I'm missing some, but it seems if we just literally erase the part that says or occupiable that's highlighted, we achieve our goal. Because I definitely understand the concern here. This does say an occupiable roof, period, and then defines when an occupiable roof becomes an occupied floor. So we just take out or occupiable roof, saying any occupied floor above 75 foot, and hey, by the way, if you have an occupiable roof with a load greater than 50, we're going to call that a floor for this purpose. So I think it's this or occupiable roof that's highlighted that's creating the challenge.
Correct.
And I'll have to admit, I'm less familiar with the existing code on this and how that works, just looking at the definition on the screen.
So looking at our existing amendment, if we strike what's highlighted here, we will return back to the existing state amendment. And I think the talk when we were doing our existing amendments report was that occupiable was being used all across the code. And we just identified this as a spot to also use that same terminology. I think Ardell has a fabulous point, though, that it's kind of muddied the definition quite a bit.
I just opened up I just opened up the 2024 and I'm looking at the definition, what it says, what exactly. A building with an occupied floor or occupied roof located more than 75 feet above the lowest level of fire department vehicle access. That's what the high.
Without the underlying portion.
Yeah. And then the only thing, so it shouldn't be occupiable roof. It should be the way I had it before, occupied roof. Okay. And then for the purpose of this definition, we will define an occupied roof with an occupied load of 50 or more. Because right now, the way the code's written, if you have an occupied roof of 10 people, right? That's a high-rise building, occupied roof, based on the model code.
Currently, and that's what we're trying to address, right?
Yeah, so what we're trying to do is if you have a small area up there, you don't fall under high-rise. That's what we're trying to address. So if you don't have an occupied load, basically any area greater than 750 square feet, you don't want to have that fall under a high-rise. So that was I guess going back, it should be or occupied roof located more. And then I think it should go back to the way it was, not occupiable, just occupied. Or it could say occupied floor or roof. Just get rid of the occupiable. And then just say, for the purpose of this definition, an occupied roof, read what it says here, with an occupied load of 50 or more shall be considered an occupied floor, because an occupied floor, yeah, I don't know, it's kind of commentary. Basically, I'm trying to eliminate the small areas with the 50 or more. I thought we had that in our state amendment already, so I was trying to move that forward.
That's not my issue, Boyd.
Oh, what's the issue?
It's either match the current state amendment, which does not include the highlighted language, or clean up the sentence to go back to the earlier proposal from Lee Kranz in 21. But I think we could just strike it, as Josh had mentioned earlier.
Yeah, the problem is in the 2024, that's fine. The definition says occupied floor or occupied roof. So
Yeah, so I think the intent was to carry forward the current state amendment. Dustin, sorry, I'll let you jump.
No, it's all good. I have to raise my hand because my button disappears for hand raising when I'm sharing screen. But I was perfectly willing to wait for you to finish your statement.
Okay, well, I was just gonna say that was the intent. So based on the intent, I would absolutely be okay with striking what's highlighted on the screen. And that takes us back to what, the tag's intent was, which is just carrying this through. So I'll go ahead and make a motion to do that now, to recommend for adoption by the full council, striking the highlighted portion on the screen and carrying forward the same state amendment. This is Tim Woodard for that motion.
Yeah.
And I second that. This is Andy.
Okay, that was Andy. Josh, go ahead. You had your hands up here.
I think everything I was going to mention has been discussed now. I just didn't put the hand down.
Okay. Dustin, go ahead. Yeah.
So looking at what we have going on here, so it looks like the 2021 amendment was brought forward from 2024 draft language. Looking at what we have here in the 24 code, occupiable roof is now defined in the 2024 model code. And maybe the most appropriate thing is to strike the state amendment to this section and go with the model code, and then rely on the definition of occupiable roof, because right now we're trying to toss another definition in onto high-rise building definition to define occupiable roof. In the model code definition, there is no occupant load. It just says an exterior space on a roof that is designed for human occupancy other than the maintenance or repair and is equipped with a means of egress system meeting the requirements of this code. I don't know, in my view, that might satisfy the intent of what was done in the 2021 code and simplify and reduce the overall amendments that we're adding into the 2024 code.
Justin, are you proposing amending the occupiable roof definition to include the occupancy that we have in the current amendment?
No, I'm not proposing that we amend either of the definitions. I'm proposing that maybe the most appropriate movement forward is to strike the existing state amendment and go with just the model code language on this.
I think the only issue with that, and I see some other hands up, and I think they're going to say the same thing, is that would effectively get rid of this state approved definition of an occupant load of greater than 50 or more. It would seem, based on what you just pointed out with the occupiable roof definition, and I think that's great, that we should be moving for the purposes of this definition, an occupiable roof with an occupant load greater than 50 or more is considered to be an, well, there's some cleanup that has to be done there, because if we just strike this, then we're losing the exception that the state approved. I would almost suggest maybe this just needs to get rewritten now that we're re-examining this and catching some challenges here instead of hammering it out now.
Okay.
Hey, go ahead, Hoyt, and then Tim.
Yeah, just picked up on. Yeah, just unmuted. Yeah, the problem with that, if you get rid of that, okay, based on the model code in the 2000 one I'm looking at, then that means every occupied roof, if it's over 75 feet, you're going to get high-rise provisions. So, I mean, that's how the code's written. And what we did here in the state specifically, I remember Lee Krantz bringing this in for small areas for occupied roofs. We didn't want to put it under the high rise. There's a lot of provisions that happen when you throw in the high rise. I guess because the code did change some other things, they do have in the definition called occupiable roof. Okay. So to me, because they have a definition of occupiable roof, that's an exterior space on a roof that is designed for human occupancies other than blah, blah, blah. So you could have occupant floor, or I think it's right. I think, or occupied roof. I'm not sure now after people talking about it that needs to be striked, but I still think, because you can always go to the definition of a dictionary, what occupiable and what roof is, and use the definition. I think maybe not striking out that occupied a roof and you get exactly the same thing. I think go with what we don't. Maybe not, but what I'm trying to do is get rid of these small spaces that are up there falling under high rise, because it has come up in the past. We've had lots of buildings like this in Tacoma, and trying to make sure these small green roofs and stuff like that have small areas up there that you don't fall under the all the high rise provisions, which there are a lot of provisions in there for the high rises that you have to meet. So that's what I'm trying to accomplish. If we have to come back to this to get it worded better, I'm looking at the 24 right now that they still have, if you have an occupied space up on the roof and it's over 75 feet, unless I'm missing something in the code, it falls under high-rise buildings. So if you have,
So, sorry to interrupt, sir, but I think we all agree with you on that. It's just a matter of how to get the code language to be consistent. It is clear that the 2024 definitely does not have the exception that the state adopted. What we're saying is, as written, it doesn't achieve the goal that I think we're trying to achieve, and we just need to get it appropriate, especially after Dustin had pointed out that we have the occupiable roof definition, and we just need to clarify the language in this. But I think we're all on the same page that the 2024 would call it a high rise, and we don't want to call those a high rise unless others feel differently.
So I'll jump in and just say that I'm comfortable moving forward with the current motion that's on the table. The reason why I say that is we're making the change to the high rise definition. We only are concerned about high rise when we're looking at this. If we made the change to the occupied floor definition or changed it there, somebody looking to see if their building was a high rise isn't going to necessarily go to multiple definition locations. So I like where it's at now with that simple change of striking or occupiable roof. It seems to get us back to what we've always done. So I just wanted to restate that I'm comfortable moving forward with the motion as it is.
Yeah. I think I understand it also, Nardell. I think it was very clear as with this strikeout here, or to combine it in one sentence would be fine too. And achieve the intent. Okay. Did we get there? I think we're all saying the same thing. It's just a matter of if the tag wants to.
I think the only other thing that may need to change is just how we've written the proposal to show that we are. Well, I suppose, yeah, if that's just drawn as a strikeout, that is what's in the code. I'm sorry, I'll stop. I agree with you, Tim.
Well, that was my question, Joss. Is it cleaner to say or occupiable roof, just strike or occupiable roof and leave the last sentence in, or is it cleaner to say with an occupied roof or occupiable roof with an occupied load of 50 or more?
Well, I want to say what the definition right now in the code that says without this change for this, it says occupied roof. It doesn't say occupiable. So
Right.
the high rise says occupied roof. So you would just keep or occupied roof and then just keep, I guess, the way I had it already, I guess. So.
But occupied roof isn't defined. Occupiable roof is defined. Okay. Well, there's a motion and a second on the table right now to recommend as shown. Anyone want to change that?
I like what Tim said, that the last sentence here is focusing on what a high rise is,
Okay.
not necessarily what a occupied
Okay.
roof is.
All right, let's go with that then. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Ardell. I believe it's better. Okay, with that, then we'll move back to our schedule. I think we are on
Number 9.
number 9, 131, please.
Okay, this one's done by Wade Jeter.
Yeah, this is just dealing with, buildings or rooms that are like dorms and stuff like that. And a lot of buildings where they have multiple sleeping units. We're trying to get this not to be considered a single dwelling unit that you would have to do when they have a central kitchen. This, I believe, is already in our state amendments, but it's not clear in the separation walls that this is still maintained. So I just wanted to carry over our state amendments to make sure this maintains. And I'm glad hopefully Ardell's still on this. I believe this a long time ago came from Seattle, but I remember in the past when I was doing work for Seattle. So if Ardell, you have anything to add on there, that would be great. Or anybody else, so.
Go ahead, Ardell. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, trying to formally, I need to be
That's fine.
recognized while you talk.
You've been addressed. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So conceptually, I agree with this. I don't know that it's necessary or that this is the right location for that interpretation. So there's definitions of a dwelling unit. Right now we're in 420.2, which is separation walls between dwelling units, right? And what this is saying is that multiple sleeping units are not a dwelling, but is that, so Hoyt, I agree with you, and I'm sure we told you, this is how we enforce it, but I hadn't thought through this change well enough to think, I don't know that this is the right location for it. You're clarifying basically that congregate housing is multiple sleeping units and is not a dwelling.
That's correct. That's what I'm clarifying exactly.
Yeah.
I'm
But
putting it
is this the right section for that? I don't know what the right section is, but that was my only pause on this. Thanks.
The only reason why is because in chapter 4, you have all these, I call it the weird chapter. Chapter 4 has all the difference for this thing. And that's where they were talking about separate dwelling units. So to me, it made sense to put that in the same location, so.
But you're
um,
almost going back to the definition, right? And to me, this is an interpretation of a definition then. So,
Only for the separation walls. So they're separating dwelling units, so.
if it's only for the separation walls, then is it a dwelling unit for everything else? I would say it's not.
Okay,
So
well, let me
that's-
hear from, yeah, go
Sorry,
ahead, Ardell. No, that's fine, Ardell. I mean, I'm trying to grab my head because it's in here already. I don't remember when we put it in, but
It's
there's no
already
changes.
in 2021, correct?
I think so, right?
Okay. Yeah. And that, I apologize.
Well, I don't remember
It's-
when,
yep.
but yeah. Okay, go ahead, Richard. We'll unpack this.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, yeah, I think you can already get there with the definitions, and this is already a state amendment, but the definition of a dwelling is a building that contains one or two dwelling units. So it's no mention of sleeping units in that. I think it's pretty clear already. If you looked at just the definitions, you could already get there. As I was just questioning I mean, again, it's an existing amendment, so I'm just questioning whether or not this is, not even necessary in the first place. Thanks.
So there are some changes in the 2024 model code as compared to the 2021 model code. The stuff here, is section in red is an existing state amendment, but the change in the model code occurs right here. This highlighted text is slightly different than the 2021 text. It is almost the same meaning, but it's just got different words. So the 2021 text is walls separating dwelling or sleeping units from other occupancies contiguous to them in the same building, and it shall be constructed as fire partitions. This one is walls separating dwelling units from sleeping units in the same building and walls separating dwelling. So it's slightly different. I think the ask of the, I believe the tag asked for this proposal, and it's mainly to bring the 2024 language into the amendment.
Right, so what you're highlighting yellow is the 2024
Yes,
amendment in the model code, yeah.
I think that's what it reads currently in the 21. The 24 changed to what he read off, but we don't see that on the screen necessarily.
Oh, you're right.
So I've got, well, I guess what I'm looking at is the 21 Washington amended code online here. Not necessarily the 21 model code, but what's identified as the amendment is the text in red. And give me one moment here.
But we move forward the model code, so is it appropriate to see the context here and type in? And I can read it if you don't have it in front of you, or we might as well look at it.
So well,
Paul, go ahead while we're talking this through.
oh
Yeah, so if you remember back in so we had a bunch of exemptions from this that they were removed by errata in the ICC in this section. And we also had some additional amendments to or exceptions to this. And so the red text is brought forward, but there was also exceptions that, like I say, were removed by errata, and then also so they were also removed during the kind of off-cycle code change for R4s, because they're included in this section as well. So I think it does help for kind of these larger spaces that have multiple sleeping units and that might have a kitchen in them. There may be other occupancies that would be, so we were a proponent of this as part of like either a assisted living or residential treatment facility. we could, and so the code has changed quite a bit since that time. So the state amendment, I think it could remain, just to help clarify that, but it could also go away, and I think it would be, we can just interpret it the way the model code states.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Tim, you're next.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I'm also in favor of, I guess, carrying this forward or recommending for adoption by full council. But to be clear, Dustin, the area that you have highlighted now, what you read off to us was different. It talked about if they were contiguous and that sort of thing. Is that what the 2024 version is? So should we have that in this body of the text? Because we're carrying forward the new code with the state amendment.
So
It-
as I'm trying to evaluate these on the fly here, what I'm showing here in red at
Answer
the
that.
last sentence is the state amendment. The highlighted text is what's new in the 2024. And so we would be
I
looking.
don't think so. I think that
No, It's
that's what
not,
Tim's saying.
yeah, it's not new. What I'm saying is that stuff you have in yellow that's highlighted, that you just highlighted.
Yep.
I have exactly the 24 open. You
Oh,
kind of, yeah.
Well, I might be right. Yeah,
Yeah.
the blue right there.
The only thing that's added, the only thing that's changed is what's in red. Okay, I had
That's the state
exactly.
amendment, correct?
Yeah, okay. What you have highlighted right there is what the code says already. So,
Yeah, you have to bring the blue in, Dustin, right?
That's what I did in the highlighted. So let me
Okay.
see.
I think you might have to check that. I think it's because this is wall separating dwelling units from sleeping units.
Right. So what I read off in the beginning is still included here after this stuff. And so up here on the top, we have the walls separating dwelling units from sleeping units in the same building, and walls separating the dwelling or sleeping units from other occupancies contiguous to them in the same building shall be constructed as fire partitions in accordance with 708. And then the existing state amendment shown down here on the bottom in the 2021 Washington Building Code is just with the red sentence here at the end of the proposal language here. This is existing language. All of this is existing language in the state amendment. What we're trying to do with this proposal is bring the 2024 language, which is the highlighted language, into the state amendment.
But that's the part I think I'm not seeing here. I think you're highlighting the sentence in the 24 code just before the blue insertion.
You very well may be right.
yeah, what I'm saying is the only thing that trying to change is just what's in red, not what you have highlighted in yellow and underlining and stuff. 'Cause that's-
It might be helpful just to pull the 24 in there so we can see it all contextually together, if that's appropriate.
Yeah, so-
I see it here. So you're right,
Yeah.
Todd. There's another section of the sentence missing. So this,
So take the highlight and the underline off that part because that's existing.
That's correct.
I agree.
Yeah, the only thing I'm adding is in red.
But Hoyt, you're not adding anything with that one. That's an existing state amendment that we're trying to carry forward. We're trying to bring in
Yeah,
the
that's what I'm
2024
saying.
code.
Yeah, my mistake. That's an existing state amendment that we have in there to carry forward for this. Yes, you're absolutely right. That's what I'm trying to add that to the 24 to maintain that state. Sorry, Dustin, I misspoke, not correctly.
You're good.
I think what we're doing here is we're just evaluating what we move forward as the 24 model code plus the state amendment, and we're evaluating whether this is still the intent.
That's correct. And I thought I did it right.
I think the current state amendment as written works with the new language in the 2024 as well. So
Okay.
Once we get that synchronized, and I don't know if we want to keep doing that here. I don't know, Dustin's mind has got to be going about 10 different places from what I can gather. But if we're going to keep doing that here, I would just say the current 2024 language
Okay.
adding the last sentence on, which is our current state amendment, I would make a motion to move that forward or recommend adoption by the full council.
Okay, thank you. That's the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that. This is Paul.
Okay, thank you, Paul. So it's been moved and seconded to recommend for adoption, what Dustin is writing, which is bringing the 24 model code together with the 21 state amendment. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, with that, then 131 is recommended for adoption. Thank you. I know you're catching up, Dustin, but you're doing great.
Just so I can have it in my notes, I missed the motioners on that.
I made the
Tim
motion
and
and
then
Tim.
Paul.
Tim and Paul. All right, awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Good, thank you. And then with that, then we'll move into agenda item 10, which is petition 038, I believe.
Yes.
And John, is that you or Micah?
Oh, that's mine, Richard Williams.
Oh, Richard, thank you. My apologies.
That's all right. Hey, Dustin, are you able to bring your document up to see if this existing amendment has been carried forward?
I've been waiting the whole time for this
Oh, no
thing.
problem.
If I click on it too many more times, I will freeze my whole system and we'll be dead in the water.
Yeah, no problem. So I'll make this quick. I'll assume it's being carried forward. This is the State Amendment 504.4.1. A couple changes need to be made to this. Some other things that need to be pointed out. NEC section, the 2023 NEC section 701.12, options C and J for standby power have been changed in this latest version and are no longer available. So this proposal removes the reference to these options. There are other changes within section 701.12 not addressed by this proposal that this committee should still be aware of. Option E has been expanded to include fuel cell systems, energy storage systems, storage battery, and other approved sources. And option H has been changed from fuel cells to microgrid systems, which are currently not referenced or adopted by the state. So if option H, I guess my point I'm trying to make is option H still is listed as an option, but it's changed. So if option H is retained in the language of the state amendment, it will now be allowing a standby power option that was not previously permitted. And I chose not to delete this reference, but instead to leave it in there so we could discuss it. And also to point out that if there is a subcommittee that reviews changes to referenced standards, particularly something, electrical, certainly outside my expertise or knowledge, any details like this. I just wanted to point out that this should be addressed by that subcommittee. And finally, I wanted to point out the last sentence of my carry forward amendment still points to the 2020 NEC, and it should be the 2023. Hopefully that's just an editorial change.
We can do
That's
that.
it.
You said the 2023?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Tim.
I remember discussing this at the tag and the option that these reference standards change. And one of the discussions we had was leaving it as the year in which it was approved originally. So essentially leaving it as 2020. So that way we didn't make structurally a change to the code by, just updating the reference standard within the exception. So I believe what the tag had previously decided to do and what we'd be asking for, or you'd be asking for a change for now, is once that spreadsheet opened on Dustin's behalf would be you'll see 2020 retained in the exception or in this code section. So I guess maybe the discussion now is if we should update it to the 2023 and modify it accordingly and have the discussion on H, but I just wanted to say that. Go ahead.
Hey, Tim, go ahead, Richard.
Yeah,
I have a question.
You
Tim,
ask and
yeah,
you shall receive, Tim. Spreadsheet.
I would just say that, whatever you guys decide, I just wanted to point out the fact that if you went to the 23, which is what's being referenced by the 24 IBC, that these options are incorrect. And I think one thing to point out though is well, I guess, yeah, no, that would probably work. My bringing this up was just stemming from the idea that I wasn't sure who looks at the details of these reference standards and how closely they look at them. So that's all.
This might be a naive question, but as a state amendment, is it good practice to be putting the year in here if we verify the reference?
Well, one thing I do want to add is I think the main concern on this for most people is the fact that you're omitting the allowance of the tap ahead of the main, right? So for a lot of people, not everyone, for a lot of people, the rest of the details could be looked at as being secondary. I think they're just concerned more about the tap of the head of the main exemption.
Okay. Hoyt, go ahead.
Yeah, I always find this kind of hard, and maybe Rich, you'd be able to say that. I've always, if you want to put the year in, is that's what's referenced in there. If you're not sure that the 2023, I thought, Dustin, that's something we would end up looking in to see if there is a change in it. And that's editorial to make sure it matches. If it doesn't, then we do the 2021. But I thought that was something that we do as a committee. I mean, if it's the same thing, then it's not, it shouldn't be an issue then, but.
So, recalling the conversations on this as we talk about it, it's bringing back my memories to it. And there was talk to update to the 2023 and make sure that our reference is correct. And as part of that, we would maybe need to reach out to L&I to make sure that their amended code, if there's an amendment there, that we're referencing the same sections. But then another tack on that same topic was, or there's two other tacks. Leave it as originally adopted so that you can look back to the 2020 and see exactly what we approved in that method, or remove the year reference entirely and rely on the interpretation of the folks actually doing the work here to go and check this with those sections. But we didn't necessarily come up with a solid plan for all code references, at least in the IBC, much less the rest of the other codes that are being worked on.
Okay, thank you, Eric.
Yes, thank you. This is Eric Vandermeer. When we get to my proposal, which is item 13 on the agenda, I'm recommending that the 2023 NEC reference gets updated to say NFPA 70. That NFPA 70 is how this code is referred to in other code sections and how it's referred to as a reference standard. So NEC is not actually, a defined term anywhere. And I guess I would agree that if you're looking for input on, what it should say, yeah, we should be referencing the 2023 NEC and not past versions of that is what I would recommend. Thank you.
But Eric, I guess my question was, is it necessary to put the year in there if we verify that the reference is correct, or is that, Dustin, what you were saying? You're not confident we'll know that.
I think that we can do it. It's just we would need to do more research on what we have here. And we wouldn't necessarily be able to, I'd say, confidently move forward with what we have drafted here.
Hey, Tim, I would say it does matter. The year does matter because the options have changed over the cycles.
Correct. The year does matter. If you want to get rid of the C, D, E, F, H language, you would adopt something that says, that you would take the header of each one of those sections, like separate service, standby generator, whatever those titles of those sections are, and put them into a list. That would be that you're not just kind of randomly referring to, you know, a section C or D or item C or D, but you're referring to an actual header of what that appropriate technology is for the backup power. And that would definitely make the code strengthen the code and make it understand the intent of which options are available. Thank you.
That's helpful. Andy?
Thank you, Todd. So just looking at the 2018, and I don't remember if we discussed this when we were previously discussing this amendment in the past. So when I did look at the 2018 Washington State Building Code, it was noted as the 2017 NEC. And in the 2021 Washington State Building Code, obviously we know it says 2020 NEC. So I agree that we should keep updating it to the current National Electrical Code that is used or referenced by the IBC. And also agree that because NEC is not referenced, you know, I think we should follow up with the proper term there, NFPA 70, or define an NEC in there.
Okay, so what does the TAG recommend? The two options, it seems, are, if I'm hearing this correctly, the proposal is to update it to 2023 as shown on the screen, make sure the sections are correct, or spell them out as Eric suggested. Andy, is your hand still up, or?
Yeah, so either we could reference 2023 NEC there, or we remove the year reference and potentially update NEC into NFPA 70. And so it goes back to, if someone is looking at this, oh, which version NFPA 70 that would be referenced in here, then they can go to the reference section in the code, which says 2023 edition.
And then it should just say NFPA 70 and make sure that it's the 23 version of the references, right?
Which it is in the model code is what I thought I just heard.
I think so too.
Yes. So
Okay.
we can potentially remove the 2023 NEC there.
I'm more than comfortable with that. I was, you know, my take on it was that, you know, a carrying forward of a state amendment shouldn't necessarily include structural changes to the code, like what is allowed, kind of like what Rich was pointing out. So I think this is great. We're having the discussion and we're reading what the new options are, and kind of maybe the focus should be on whether or not that H goes through, or even if we want to consider what C and J were amended to. But it just still feels like we're getting like partial information, if you will, meaning we don't have the full NFPA to look at the tag. We weren't able to be provided with the full NFPA to look at, to go over. So how could we make a educational change when we don't know what those are going to be?
Go ahead. Thank you. Tim, was that your comment also? Richard?
Oh, yeah, this is Rich. Yeah, so I would just add one more time that if you choose the language that's on the screen and choose to include option H, some sort of a technical discussion would have to be had on your end of things to confirm whether or not you consider microgrid systems to be a viable standby power option. If that's up for debate and you'd be more comfortable omitting the reference to option H currently, only to add it back later if you make that determination. You'd have to figure out which one you're comfortable with. To leave it now, delete it later possibly, or vice versa.
Well, I think I'm hearing there's some desire to have that discussion, yet we don't know what D, E, F, and H are if we don't have the code in front of us. So then is the question something like Eric was suggesting, where we need to spell this out more in the proposal?
Yeah, again, I think it's probably more of a technical discussion to be had. It's just and maybe not had by this group necessarily, but just wanted to point that out. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, Hoyt.
One thing I would like to say on this too, I do think the ones that are in the NFPA all the time are the fire. So I think the fire code tag should also take a look at this just to get their input on it too, that he's references. I looked at it. I'm not a fire reviewer or anything like that. I thought the proposal was okay, but because I try to look at some of these things ahead of time, but I do think it's the fire code should have a say on this, not us to be making this decision personally. So
Okay. What does the tag recommend then?
I'll make a recommendation. I make a recommendation to submit this to the fire tag for their input and have them bring back. And then based on their input, we make a decision to either approve it or not approve it. But I would like to have the fire tag have a look at this too, when it's referencing code that I believe most of us on this call are not in all the time.
Okay. Eric, do you want to say something before a second is entertained?
I just I'd be willing to create a table with the different options and draft code language if the tag would rather move away from options C, D, E, F, and H and move towards those specific header requirements in a list. I'd be willing to kind of create that for the past code cycles, what was acceptable and what the change was worth. So if this wants to get tabled to a future meeting.
Eric, is it fair that you seem to be in favor of that approach?
Yeah, I would definitely clarify the code, at least what the intent was, rather than just referring to some random sections that seem to be changing every NFPA 70 cycle. So
it's challenging. I agree. Okay, right now we have the motion on the table to refer this to the fire code tag. Is there a second on that motion? Which can include additional work. Is there a second to refer it, or is absence of?
I would second that. This
Okay.
is Paul Clark.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, so the
I think we
motion
need
right now is to
more
refer to the
information.
fire tag, which can include then a little more work by the proponents or by, it sounds like Eric might be willing to volunteer some of that effort. Go ahead, Tim.
Just for discussion's sake, I think if we were presented with that information, we'd be comfortable making the call, and I'm not sure who the right committee is, and maybe it should be correlated between the two. But this is definitely in the building code, right? It's not in the fire code whatsoever. So this would be, in my mind, a little unprecedented. But that said, I really appreciate what Eric offered to do. And what I'd love to do is sit down and actually see what the new NFPA requirements are. And if that could be presented to us on a dual screen to see which ways, this has changed. I think that would give me the information to feel comfortable making a decision instead of just relying on the word of people, which I'm not saying anybody's lying here, but unless we actually see what the NFPA codes are, I just don't feel like I could vote either way.
Okay, well, maybe that's the alternative. We just table this and give it some more time with the proponent and with others that want to contribute to it. Wait, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted, that's exactly what I was intending, Tim. And maybe I didn't say it correctly. Just having also the fire tag look at it too. But I do agree it does have to come back to us because it's in our code and based on their input, we'd have to make this decision. So that was all I was asking. I actually 100% agree with that. I've actually read through this, to be honest. I feel comfortable with it, but I think for everybody to be comfortable with it, it's better to be knowledgeable in what you're voting for. I
don't think we even need to vote if we just want to. We can vote to table it and go ahead, Dustin. You're going to suggest something here.
Well, I wasn't necessarily going to suggest anything for moving this one forward, but the NFPA 70 is, I guess, colloquially referred to as the National Electric Code. And while it is an NFPA document, it would be the first time I've heard the fire tag discussing the electrical code on this one. So I don't know if moving it over to the fire tag is the most appropriate movement for this one, especially in light of the comments that it has to come back to us anyway, and we have some volunteer willingness to maybe propose something that clarifies it a little bit better for us to bring back at a future meeting. I personally feel that that might be the more appropriate avenue instead of forwarding it onto the fire code. They are, similarly burdened with lots of proposals to deal with. And if, I am first to raise my hand and say I'm not familiar with this section in NFPA 70, and if it had to do with, fire regulations, I'd say yes, let's do it. But I think this is referring more to electrical regulations, and I think that it might be best to keep it housed here and maybe table for a future meeting with a little bit of additional review on our part.
Okay, Hoyt and then Richard.
Yeah, just real quick, I'm fine with that tabling it. I do have to say, I personally, I would have to abstain from voting because I do not know the National Electrical Code. We have other disciplines that deal with that. So that's why I was bringing that up. So that was what I'm fine with tabling it. I would have to read up a little bit more on that, but I did read on it myself, and kind of it made sense to me when I read through it and went into those codes, but I'm not an electrician at all. So.
Okay. Okay, with that, can we hear to retract the motion and second on the table here and propose to table it? I don't recall who made the motion.
Hoyt was the first and Paul was the second.
Yeah, I remove my motion then if people
Okay.
want to go in there and look. I mean, everything I've read, I think it's okay, but that's, you brought up a good point someone said about the electrical code, and so I'm fine with tabling it to the next cycle. I'll do a little more research on this one.
Okay, let's do it, maybe a quick motion to table it for further development.
Yeah,
I
this
think-
is
Can someone,
Paul. Yeah, we can table it until we know more.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Is a second?
This is Josh Margins, I'll second.
Thank you, Josh. Any other discussion? All those in favor of tabling signify by saying aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Sorry, it's going so fast. Okay, so we will table this one. And now that's 038, right?
Yeah.
No.
Todd, did you have to head out at 3:30?
Yeah, now I'm gonna make Dustin's life even harder and turn over the chair. So I'm gonna call in, but I will no longer be chairing then. So thank you, everyone.
Okay, that wraps us with 038 with a revision saved there. It's not necessarily a revision that we're moving forward. Before we move on to our next one, number 11, Eric and Richard, would it be desirable for me to connect you guys via email so that you might be able to collaborate a little bit on this one since it's Richard's proposal?
Sure, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Yeah, the other option is I essentially have a similar proposal under item 13 if we were to jump to that. And so what I would potentially be doing is revising my proposal. Anyways, but I'm willing to do the legwork that was discussed. So.
Okay.
And talk to Richard. Yeah.
I'd like to give you guys an introduction email just to make sure we have the same contacts, and we'll get that working. And then as far as bringing it back, we're trying to wrap up this process here pretty by the end of the month, pretty much. So if we give you 2 weeks, do you think that's enough time to come back with a revised proposal?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Thanks for doing that, Eric. I just don't have access to the NFPA standards or the NEC standards. I wish the tag members
they're all
were
available for
that.
free online. You just got to sign up for your NFPA account.
Oh, okay.
gonna say that too, Tim. They're free online. They're free online.
All right, we're on number 11, which is 24 GP1089. This one comes to us from the city of Tacoma. Looks like Joe Mayo, or do I have that right on here?
Not
No, I'm
City of
sorry. It's a
Tacoma.
tag petition. I'm reading the wrong line. That's my bad.
Yeah,
Um,
this is a personal submission, not part of the tags. I may have mislabeled that.
No, you didn't. I was reading the wrong line on our agenda.
Okay. Do you want me
Oh,
to
maybe you did.
dive
No,
in?
I'm sorry. It's okay. Either way.
Okay. Do you want me to dive in here and give a brief
Yes, please. That would be
introduction here?
spectacular.
This is for 510 special provisions. The code currently allows only type 1A construction for the 3-hour horizontal building assembly and then the construction below. Several of you probably remember a few years ago, a few new construction types were introduced. Type 4A was one of those, which was really modeled after type 1A, and that it has identical fire rating requirements as type 1A per table 601. And really, one of the main differences, besides just what the building is made out of, is that type 1A has a limited height and area, and type 4A does have limits on height and area. So the new type 4 construction types, many of you probably remember, they were pre-adopted into the Washington Code around 2018, I think somewhere around there. So they have been available for use, and there's been many mass timber projects that have been built during that time. So knowledge has accrued for these new construction types since they were originally adopted into the Washington State Code. Is a pretty, as an architect, I know it's a popular construction type, and allowing type 4A to be used for the horizontal building separation and below, I think would give designers, owners, and developers some more options for designing projects and trying to make them pencil. One of the big benefits that I could see is that it really would have more or less a single wood-based trade constructing the entire superstructure, and rather than multiple trades, and that could help save costs and also support affordability and finding new options for multifamily housing, which we all know our region sorely needs. Type 4A construction types are also very fast to construct, quiet, support rapid development of housing, as well as other building types, while potentially reducing costs and reducing time, and also potentially neighbor complaints. And then last point I have in this proposal is that type 4A construction has also been demonstrated through life cycle analysis to have fewer carbon emissions associated than traditional type 1A construction methods. And so that also supports the state's goals of 70% carbon reductions by 2030. And I know that there's some structural requirements for the horizontal building separation. So I think there's kind of the building code, but I know there's additional requirements in the structural code for this as well. But this is really just for the building code.
All righty. Thank you, Jill. Is there any comments or questions for him? Tim.
I would just say, I mean, I see what the goal is, and it sounds great. But anytime there is a reduction in, there's already a story reduction, right? So we're adding a story. Now we're reducing what the requirements are to add a story. It seems like a proposal like that should include some sort of, modeling from a fire engineer or something to substantiate that we're still going to have the same degree of protection for the residences above. Thanks.
John.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to express a little bit of concern. I mean, I was one of the proponents to help get this into the code, both at the national level and at the state level. I do have some concern about extending this to other types of construction. I want to make it clear that type 1 is not the same, or type 4A is not the same as type 1. I mean, the big difference is that type 1 is non-combustible and wood is not non-combustible. Now, we get the same fire rating, but a lot of these things, these provisions in the code are not just predicated on fire rating. So I do have some concern about this personally, about where this is going. I mean, I agreed with getting the type 4A and 4B and all that other stuff. I helped get that in, but as you start expanding it, the question is kind of what Tim said. Where are we going with this? I will say that there's a couple minor editorial things that could probably get fixed, particularly the second one where it says 510.3 exception 1. There's the reference isn't quite right, and I can certainly send that to Joe or to Dustin to get that fixed if this goes through. But that's just a minor editorials thing. I'm more concerned about the expanding this. Basically, what we're saying is type 4A is exactly the same thing as type 1A.
Thank you. Hoyt?
Yeah, I'm just gonna emphasize, I'm also gonna vote against this one because they're not the same. Type 4A and type 1A. There's a lot of certain combustible stuffs and I don't think they're equivalent based on all the reading that I've done for this new type of construction in there. And I don't think at this time we should be making this change to our state to put in something without having research and data to show that 4A is a type 1 is equivalent to a type 1A building. That they're not. There's other items that are in there that need to be addressed, and putting this statement in there I think will confuse the interpretation of the code and not make it totally clear. And I don't and so for me, I'm just letting you know I'm going to vote against this change in the code because I do not think they're equivalent. And there are items in the code that shows that they're not equivalent in certain areas. So especially some structural requirements.
Thank you, Hoyt. Ardell?
I had a question for Joe. Had you envisioned, because I think there's still height limits on 4A that could be lower than a combined structure, right? So if I'm in, a type 4A R occupancy, if that's still permitted a 13R, and maybe sorry, I'm way down a deep path of how does this break, right? Like, what were the occupancies and what were the construction types that you envisioned on top of the podium? And maybe this goes back to some of John's statement earlier, or even just the question of, can we get a fire model? But 4A does have more restrictions on it than 1A. And I don't think this proposal addresses that by just saying it's equivalent by the rating in Chapter 6. Thanks.
Jane?
Yeah, this is Shane Ellis. I'm with the American Wood Council. And so I haven't had a chance to analyze this or even bring this back to the American Wood Council in terms of trying to make a determination on what our stance would be. But I do want to just kind of make some general comments about, the type 4A, B, and C. I mean, all those construction types have gone over substantial amount of testing and probably with more intense scrutiny than any other construction type, just by nature of what it was and rightfully so. So I think there's comments being made about, whether or not it's the equivalent, and there's actually in a lot of ways that there's also things about type 4A that has additional stringencies on it over type 1A, for instance, permissible materials within combustibles or concealed spaces. And so, I guess I just want to throw it out there that it's not quite as simple as saying, well, it's a combustible construction, therefore it's not equivalent. It would be fair to say that it's not, because again, there are going to be differences, but for this purposes and what the proponent would like to do, I think it's worth additional consideration, and I'd be more than happy to kind of, again, bring this back to our group, and then maybe at a future time bring more detailed analysis anyways for this body.
Any other
Yeah.
questions or comments? Alrighty, so I heard that there will be some potential no votes on this one. I would be curious if there's any suggestions that the potential no voters might make to move this towards something that they would be favoring. So work by Shane and Joe might bring us something back, but is there specific sections that we're having issues with and that we can specifically point out to these proponents? Wait.
Yeah, basically without having to go through, there's other requirements. I can't give them the specific steps off the top of my head, but this is a big change. 1A is, the best construction you can do in the code. So, and unless I actually see data that shows that it's equivalent, I don't think I have not seen that in my personal experience on dealing with this cross-laminated timber type of construction and things like that. And until I actually read that data and have come up with this, based on this, they're just talking about from table 601. They need to do a more detailed analysis throughout the code that shows all this. I personally have not had time. I personally have not done that myself, so I would have to go do that. But based on testimonies at the ICC hearings and different people talking about it, 1A and type 4A are not equivalent. And that's why I'm voting against it, because that construction is specifically different in areas, and probably not only in the IBC. I would also have to look to see in the other codes, model codes that are also adopted, to see how that affects the fire code and things like that. So and then that's one reason why I would be voting against this right now.
Thank you, Hoyt. Tim?
So I think my biggest concern would be our other amendments to the Washington State Code that already adds an additional story. But then again, if you're not trying to utilize those amendments, I don't really see a purpose in bringing this forward at all. Meaning you could already build it this way and wood on top of it and keep it 4 stories and not need to get that horizontal separation that you're trying to do a new building and story numbers on top of. So with that said, I just don't I don't feel like I have enough to move forward. So I can't offer Joe something that would make me more comfortable.
Gotcha. Thank you, Tim. So as a group here with the tag, entertain a motion to table this till a later meeting and give Joe and Shane an opportunity to maybe put something together that's more favorable for the group.
Yeah, can I give them one more thing too? That when they do that, when they're looking at these tables and stuff, they also got to look at all the different occupancies they have too, right? Not just a residential occupancy for this. So, this will be a major change in all the occupancies. If you're trying to say a type 5A or type 4A, I'm sorry, is equivalent to a type 1A. And so if they want to table it, I'm fine with that. Or if we want to vote with it, I can make a motion also. It's up to them.
I'll defer to the group here. What would be the will of the tag?
Well, I think based on this was more, I did envision this as get a conversation going about it and not coming with any expectations that this would be approved. So it would be nice to be able to talk with Shane. It's nice to meet you virtually, Shane, and talk with him a little bit more about this, and then we can see if there's really any reason to continue carrying this proposal forward at all, because as it's currently written, it doesn't sound like it's going to pass. So, but maybe there's some other way that, or some more, I guess, dialed in way, or I don't know, something else that could be passable in terms of maybe if it's just for housing, or it's one story and it's a limited amount of square footage above, or I don't know, some other qualifications that could make something like this more something that would be passable. And it would also address these issues of, trying to get more housing built, do it in a more affordable way. So it's really about finding new design options that are out there. And I definitely hear what people are saying. So I would propose tabling it. And then after Shane and I have had a chance to talk, we'll see if we want to bring it back.
All right, so I'll take that as a motion from Joe. Do we have a second to table?
Josh Mergens, I'll second it.
All righty. Any further discussion? All those in favor of tabling this item till a future meeting, please say aye.
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 Are there any in opposition? All righty, that motion carries. Just as some admin work on that one, Joe and Shane, I'll be looking to connect you guys via email. Shane, I might have you just jot down Joe's email here. I don't have yours available, so I could connect you. And I'll ask you guys to bring that back to us in 2 weeks, and I'd look for a due date in about a week so I can post it for digestion on that one for everybody. So tabling it for a future meeting. If it's not back right at that 2 week time, I think we still have a little bit of room in our group one cycle to get it in after that, but I'd like to try to get it in as soon as we can. All right, we have 3 minutes left on that one. Let's see, we're at 11. Number 12 is on horizontal building separation allowance. I'll bring it up. We can start a discussion on it, but I don't think that we're gonna get to finish this one here today. This one is from also Joe. Do you have a brief intro on this one, and then we can probably wrap the meeting at that point?
Yeah, just briefly. I've currently been working on some schools here in Seattle, and if you look at the most recent BEX 5, which is the levy funding for the schools, all the most recent batch of schools are 3 stories, or 80% of them are 3 stories or taller. They're all replacement schools going on the same site. And they're trying to put more students, more programming space on existing sites to replace existing schools. And really, land is at a premium. There's not enough space oftentimes. So this is looking at, there's a lot of occupancies that are allowed above the horizontal assembly, but group E is not. And so as our schools get larger and the availability of land gets smaller, and certainly requirements for parking for both students and staff and drop off, there's a lot of requirements on these sites. So having being able to have a podium construction with a school on top might make certain sites that aren't feasible for schools, might actually make them feasible going up in a more vertical fashion, which is what we're seeing now.
All righty, thanks, Joe. I think that that's gonna probably conclude us. Our next meeting is gonna be on the 24th. We do not have a meeting this week. The ICC hearings are kind of conflicting, and so we'll have a lot of folks out for that one. And there's a WABO meeting this week as well, and also a Southwest ICC chapter meeting happening as well, Tuesday and Wednesday. And anyway, so I'll be at both of those, and we will see everybody in this group next Thursday, the 24th, from 1 to 4. We're gonna go 3 hours trying to wrap up the rest of this business, and we'll see where we get at that point. So I appreciate everybody's time today. The input was good, and I think we're doing good work.
Hey, Dusty, can you stay on when everyone jumps off? Sorry,
Yeah,
you
no
just-
worries. I can stay.
Thanks all.
Thank you.